Morning, everybody. Texas Homer. Joe Cook standing in for Eric. Eric is heading to Nashville. Joe actually will too later for an on-3 thing. But the wonderful Joe Cook is with us today. And then Coach Dub as well. All right. So the agenda for today, gentlemen, we will talk to Super Bowl a little bit later. Really fun game. I had a blast watching that one. That was great product. But we'll start with the spring game looking not likely, the safety coaching search, and then we'll also kind of go through a corner room audit. A lot of this stuff is Eric's stuff. We'll kind of talk about, figure it out. All right, so first things first, guys. Spring game not likely. Came out last week that was a potential. We had Matt Rule saying that he didn't want to do it for the sake of like not getting poached, which I thought was a weird reason. And so I think there's other reasons behind that. But as we've kind of progressed, we did a deep dive on it, kind of just exploring the topic. But Eric the other day put out a piece that he thought, we wouldn't bet on having a spring game. So how do we feel about that? What's the logic behind that? I know the fans have actually been surprisingly accepting of it. I've heard them like several times be like, yeah, I get it, which I did not expect. I thought there was going to be a pushback there, but there wasn't. But Joe, you know what's going on there. What's up with the lack of spring games? It's sweeping the nation, Joe.
So the Rule part of it, I think Rule is just scared of, let's say, I don't want to say Dylan Raiola because they're not going to let him go. I don't know, whatever good running back they have who may be a second stringer balling out and being like, I need more. I think that's what Rule's afraid of. And that's even at a place where I tend to believe Nebraska's got a pretty robust collective. With Texas, I don't think that's a concern. I think the Ducks are in a row when it comes to Texas One Fund and hitting, their marks and making their commitments. But let's look at the real aspect. I think is just games. Like Texas has played 16 and 30 games over the last 2 seasons. That's a lot. The season went all the way into mid-January, where it used to end in early January at best. That's a lot of games, and especially for a team that's kind of coming into form and looking a little bit different. Maybe you want to keep those hits off. And the thing is, you still have the 15 spring practices,
right? And the scrimmages.
You have maybe two scrimmages, but maybe they don't want that extended, 100 play or 60-minute running clock scrimmage just to save one extra day of hits.
Yeah. So do you still do? That's my question, right? If the whole goal here is to limit guys potentially getting hurt, do you still continue? Do you do the scrimmages, Coach? What do you think? Do you do the scrimmages? Do we move to more of an NFL style where you're basically just learning scheme executing, but it's not about like hitting dudes?
It really depends. The roster, how many people you have on your roster, right? How many people are banged up during the spring? I think you always have one good scrimmage because you want to get an indication how physical guys are tackling, right? Especially young guys coming in or new portal guys that come in. So you want to see how everybody looks going 100 miles per hour, going full speed. But if you feel like you got everything you need within those 15 practices, maybe you don't do a second scrimmage, or maybe you do one for the younger guys, right? To kind of find your depth guys. So I think you'll see teams do that. But as far as like the spring game, you kind of take what Ole Miss did last year. They kind of made it fun, right? They had 7-on-7, a slam dunk contest. Like you can still do that. The fans would be appreciative of it because they still have autograph signing. You can make it like a fun fest day. But usually, like the coaches will see everything they need to see within those 15 practices. And I think you can have really one good scrimmage and then have a scrimmage for the young guys, kind of like they do in the fall, honestly.
Mm-hmm. You can do fan service like that. And I thought that was silly last year. Like, oh, you paid a bunch of money for, like they did. They paid a bunch of money for a lot of great players, and they're not going to put it on display to generate excitement. But I guess, now with a year of hindsight and 30 games after 2 years, you're kind of like, okay, that makes sense. You can still do the fan service. Like,
right.
It would be fun to see DeAndre Moore and Arch Manning and, Alex January dunk on a 9-foot hoop.
Like, I want to see him race. We need to prove who the fastest player is, and that should be at spring ball now, where we do have the fastest guy does have to race in front of everyone.
Well, let's do the big man relay.
I'm with it.
You can do the fan service, and Coach, I love that idea because you also don't want to get rid of the advantage that you have by having a full spring roster. Because we used to talk about how, they can't do everything they want to on the offensive line because they only have 9. Well, all these guys are enrolling early, so that applies not just to O-line, but also to every position. So why not take advantage of having a full complement of roster? And also, you hear Sark talk about, we got to play these young guys. We got to get them exposed. We got to, make sure they're ready. Well, you got to have these types of scrimmages. So even though you go through practices, you go through those summer OTA player-led workouts, you don't want that first scrimmage in the fall, even when they've been on campus for 7 months, to be the first time they're getting hit for real.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So 2 things when we were talking about fan service. Sorry, someone's knocking. Get my dogs going. I'll answer that shortly, but you guys will answer this question for me. How does this affect TV money and, like you said, the concession sales and all that stuff for the school? I'm going to hop off for 1 second. You guys go at it.
Does it?
You go ahead, Coach.
I'm gonna say, does it really?
That's like
my Texas
question.
Fan Appreciation Day. ESPN is still filming because you have Arch. I think somebody come in and said Arch Mania season. Like, Arch is gonna sell itself. Everybody wants to see Arch. You put him in a slam dunk contest or a race or something like that, man. It's still people are gonna tune in and watch that no matter what.
Yeah, and this has always been a free event too. Like they don't collect a gate. It's fan service, and usually what Texas does a very good job of, and I think a lot of other schools have started to do this. They try to put a home baseball and home softball series that same weekend, or pick a weekend that has all that, so people can come in Friday and go to the Dish and go to McCombs, and then Saturday, park for free. That's another thing. Like a lot of this it's fan service because they know in the fall they're going to rake it in.
Yeah.
So if the goal is, to still have fan service, I don't think TV money, I don't think, concessions is going to be really anything they worry about because they've always, I'm guessing, kind of operated at a loss on those just because, the TV, the spring game is not part of what ESPN pays for. They get it. They're welcome. But, I think you've seen spring games on ESPN Plus and SEC Plus before. So I don't think it's one of those things where now ESPN's going to want to put Arch Manning on their screen, of course.
Yes, sir.
But at the same time, I think the fan service part can still be hit with everything UT, for the music thing, what's it called? The Longhorn City Limits. Like there's so many different things that they can do without having a game.
Yeah.
I only heard half of that, but I agree with you, Joe. Great. And another thing that I like sneakily is if you don't display necessarily the spring game, the players that you worry about transferring don't necessarily know where they're at in the depth chart. So like there's a little bit of this advantage too, where you can kind of hide like no, man, like you're gonna play a lot more in the fall, and they don't get disgruntled. Coach, is there anything to that?
Honestly, but you can find out your picking order during the practices, right? You know how many reps you're getting. You know if you're third team.
You got to cheat that too. The whole you got to play the whole
have to
game.
cheat the practices too,
Yep.
Unless they had a lot of guys rotating in. If you got both of them going on 2 separate fields and people switching fields, maybe you can hide it that way. But for the most part, you kind of know where you're at. And then, like I said, if we still have the scrimmages, you'll definitely know where you're at as far as scrimmages, and be your chance to move up. So it really just depends on that one.
So y'all remember how basically for bowl games, you got 15 practices. And so the first 4 or 5, and this was across, Charlie from the one bowl, Herman and Sark for the Alamo Bowl, first 4 or 5, they would let the young guys kind of take control.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in the playoff and kind of a playoff team, you may not be able to do that as much.
Right.
You have to dedicate attention to getting ready for Clemson, for getting ready for Arizona State. So I wonder if this kind of transitions like into how I don't know how the NFL does it because there's like mandatory OTAs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some mandatory things or some optional things, and I can't remember which is which. But like if you're Sark, yeah, you want your guy, and think of it like from a Mahomes standpoint. Like, does Mahomes need OTAs? Probably not. But he'll still go get some routes with Worthy, get some routes with Kelsey, that type of thing, to stay fresh-ish. Maybe that's something you can do with these guys. Like, I know it's tough because it's pro to college, but like, how many reps does someone like Michael Taft need? How many reps does Anthony Hill need? Some for sure, but are you being like, all right, first string, 60% of the snaps, second string, 30, third string? Like, I feel like a lot of spring practice, as a lot of things have happened in college football, is going to start moving towards like what the NFL looks like and learning how to keep hits off guys as the season gets longer.
You know, it's funny you say that. Just visiting some high schools last week, I got high school coaches talking about, yeah, my spring is going to look different. We're not going to hit as much, you know, because we went to the playoffs. We had a long season. It's like, man, it's just like trickling down to high school. So people are just trying to find different ways to keep players healthy, but still get a lot of mental reps.
That will be interesting if we start going to high schools not hitting, colleges not hitting. What's the upstream effects there in the NFL don't hit? So it's like, I mean, they still hit. You watch them in the games. We'll talk about the Super Bowl shortly, but it is interesting if everyone's kind of going away from that. I agree with the initial premise. It's like, hey man, this is probably a time to get your young guys the reps. We don't need to see Michael Taft, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's interesting, especially when you're mentioning that you're probably going to end up losing that in December when you would normally get the young guys. So I think it's really a time to develop second and third string. And what we're talking about these long seasons too, it's all about depth. So having skilled depth is huge.
Yes.
And remember, like, what's the roster limit now? You got the 85, and then you can get up to like what, 125. Well, you're about to lose 20 guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whenever they figure out what to do with House, so we're going to see even more restrictions on what reps they may be able to allocate and the physicality they can do in practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. There's a part of me that's disappointed, right? I like going to Austin for the spring game.
Yeah,
you know, I go with my wife. We hang out, and it's a good time. It's just a good time to be back in the city. You know, I use it as an excuse to kind of go around the old stomping ground. So that part's a bummer, but hopefully, and mostly hit the restaurants that I missed from college. That is gonna be it's gonna be a bummer. Hopefully, they do it. Maybe it is kind of Pro Bowl-y. Hopefully, it's not as corny as like the Pro Bowl, but doing something to get the fan engagement out there, I do think is important, whether it's some 7-on-7 stuff, because I don't want it just to be acts kind of all together and then there's just nothing going on there. Right. Especially for us, purely business-wise. Like, we need something to ramp up to, you know?
Oh, let's analyze this 7-on-7 rep.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, look, I know we try to squeeze every bit of juice out of the orange, but at the same time, it's a 7-on-7 rep.
Yeah. The spring game sucks. Yeah, if there's not a healthy alternative, like I said, that would be kind of a bummer. What's up, Jacob? Good morning, man. All right, you guys want to – well, first, let's hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll talk about got something, Joe?
No.
Oh, cool. You're just give me a little something, give me a little action. All right, guys, and then after we get back, we will talk about the legendary Super Bowl yesterday.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured – trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
All right. That was an awful Super Bowl. There was nothing. I mean, that was just bad from the start. Eagles were dominant. Chiefs look sketchy. Shout out Worthy.
Yeah.
Worthy's making some plays, man. So shout out to him. That was a bright spot. But Pat was running for his life. I didn't realize the Eagles were like that. You could call me a casual NFL viewer. I'm not like how I am with Texas football, but man. And then who was it? Brooks, a film guy or whatever, said something about like the NFL's got to do something about these first round matchup blowouts, making fun of everybody that was mad at the CFP games. So kind of, what was y'all's impressions? I doubt they're super insightful besides like that was boring.
I mean, honestly, at the beginning of the game, I thought, okay, here we go. Let's see this chess match. And then the Eagles just took all the momentum. They took the air out the ball. Like once they went up, what was 17-0 with the interception from Cooper, It was like, this is gonna be a rough uphill battle because Kansas City they just wanted all the splash plays. They just wanted to go deep all day. Like they didn't play a full complete game. And I know being down, you don't run the ball as much, but I felt like they got out of their game plan early. And it's like, all right, we're just gonna try to throw. It's like playing Madden, right? You're down and you just want to throw it deep just to get back in the game. It's like, no, play your game. You don't have to do this. But the Eagles just kind of just teed off on him, and Patrick Mahomes ran for his life all night.
There's one I want to make one Cooper DeJean point. You know how in South Texas there's FAR San Juan Alamo High School?
Yeah.
And I think there's a FAR San Juan Alamo North. Cooper DeJean's high school in Iowa, Oldable, Arthur, Battle Creek, Ida Grove. Like he's got 5 different schools, and it doesn't even get 1,000 people. So small town guy, superhuman who made that big play. My big takeaway was in the constant battle between coverage and pressure, pressure won. Like I think y'all saw that stat where Philadelphia did not blitz.
Yeah, that's a crazy.
That was crazy.
Like, especially to watch how much Pat Mahomes was running for his life. It wouldn't make sense if you didn't know that.
And you had Jalen Carter doing his thing. They have great edge rushers. You saw Ojimo get his ring.
Yep.
Make a tackle for loss. But Fangio, like his defenses have been all the rage, and it's the too high to prevent those 2 big plays that Worthy got. That's what that defense is designed.
He's the one that's been leading the whole revolution on too high. Like that's Fangio's style that's leaked everywhere.
Yeah, and so not only did Andy Reid kind of called a dud. Like if they're not going to let you get beat deep, then Kelsey had a bad game. But let guys try to work out underneath. Like D-Hop's not that old and unathletic to where he can't make a few plays, and you got Worthy. But at the same time, like there was just pressure constantly to where they didn't try to get out of that pressure quickly enough, and they didn't even like run the ball. It was just there was nothing there for him. And then I think I saw Ian tweet out like, "Man, I've doubted Jalen Hurts every step of the way, and he continues to do it." He's got some great receivers, and his skill talent in a salary cap league is unbelievable. But man, he is durable. And if you're going to play the type of game that he plays, you got to be durable. Sometimes you can have all the schematics, but if you're tough and tougher than the other guy, it matters. And Jalen Hurts is obviously that.
So this is what's funny and ironic is me and Ian last week were talking about Jalen Milroe, and we were like, man, all he can do is run and like throw deep. And we were like, that won't even work in the league anymore because we're like, they're playing too high.
Yeah.
And then all Jalen Hurts did was just hit dime after dime over the defense. Yep. I mean, that's what it was, man. He was just getting one-on-one matchups and throwing great fade balls, like awesome. And so that was interesting to see that the Chiefs basically said, like, look, Saquon's not going to run on us, therefore it's going to force us into man. And they're like, all right, we're going to beat you on the outside. And they did time after time. It was interesting to watch.
Yeah.
What was the trivia is not only did Texas get their first touchdown in the Super Bowl with Worthy, but so did Alabama. And that's great. Yeah. Devonta Smith was the first. And did Mark Ingram make a Super Bowl? I can't remember.
No, I
don't
remember.
And it's weird, like in this tabulation, how they account for it, like passing touchdowns apparently don't matter. So I can't remember if Joe Namath threw for a touchdown in 3, but like there have been some good Alabama running backs and some tight ends and defensive backs. And so nobody's you had a guy from Iowa score a pick 6 before Texas had a player score a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
What do you do if you're Pat Mahomes? They're rushing 4. They're getting home every time. They're keeping 2 high safeties so you can't throw. And whenever you did start throwing to the middle, Cooper DeJean pick 6s you. Like there's nothing there, No. And then they're throwing like short stuff to Worthy, and they're still like on the outside, like on a swing, and they're getting to Worthy. So it's like, dude, it's like it was a bad game, but it's like nothing was there. Like the Eagles had an incredible defensive performance.
They did.
And also that was just about athletes. I mean, like we said, Fangio's running like 4 coverages all year. Like they're the most stripped down defense. They're just playing. It's just ballers. Yeah. And that's what's interesting. It's not like all this cutesy scheme stuff that was confusing Pat. Like they're just a better defense. Yeah. That's going to be more frustrating.
Yeah. And I love that. You don't have to be so complex on defense. Like just play what you're good at. Do what you're good at. Simplify it. let the athletes be athletes. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. Those guys up front, man, they kept rotating. It seems like it was a new name every time getting to Pat Mahomes. Like, oh my God, what is this? Like Hunt. I don't even know who Hunt is, but he was definitely hunting Pat Mahomes last night. Like they were making play after play.
Pat was nervous too, man. Like,
He
and
was.
Brady kept pointing it out every 5 seconds. Like, look at his feet. Like, they're never set. He's ready to run, you know? And so it's like he was dropping his eyes, running, and it was an interesting performance of Pat. Now, here's the thing. If people are like, well, now I heard someone say the blueprint's out on Pat. No, it's not. You need like the great defense like that. You need a defense that can rush 4 and drop 7.
Yeah.
Like that. Those defenses don't come around that often.
Blake has a good thing. Like Mahomes was 7-0 against Fangio before then, and Blake, he was with the Broncos for a while, right? So they would match up 2 times a year.
The Eagles had a hell of a defense that most teams will not be able to match again. So that's what cracked me up when they're like, it's over for Mahomes. I was like, no, that was just a special defense.
Do you think Texas moves? Because Texas was like cover 3, not too high. Now they would show 2 high shells,
right, and rotate
a
down
whole lot. But they would drop somebody into the box pretty regularly, kind of to defer this to Texas or refer this to Texas. Do y'all think maybe they look, not because of the Super Bowl, but with personnel? Do you think maybe they move back a little bit, or was that maybe dependent on having guys like Sweat and Murphy being in the middle to make that happen?
What do you think, Coach?
I think we probably could see a little bit of it, just because you want to protect. You don't know the other side, who the corner's going to be on the other side, so you may want to keep a safety on just above, on top of the other corner, opposite of Muhammad next year. But if you can really stop the run with that light box, I don't see why you can not play too high and take away all the deep passes. Right, keep everything in front of you. Maybe we go back to it. We'll see.
I mean, we saw it versus Jeremiah Smith, right?
Yeah, we did.
It's like you keep the safeties up, and then you play quarters, you know. So it's like, man, the funniest part is how we talk about coverages in football. So when we say like a team is a match 3 team across NFL, whatever, it means they play it 40% of the time. And then they play the other one 30% of the time. So we act like when we say like teams are in 1 high, they're playing like 70% of the time. They're playing it 40% of the time, then they're playing 2 high 30%. So every team plays everything. And I think it's kind of situational. But I mean, I like the Fangio.
Important too.
Yeah.
You know, like having the appearance of 2 high, and even so, like you can look at how a guy's feet are, kind of where they're looking.
Yeah.
But
they also will cheat down. They'll be 2 high, but one safety's clearly like 10 feet in front of the other. It's like you're rotating down. But it's I mean, I like the Fangio style defense when I'm looking from a defensive perspective. I hate it for like the league. Like I think it's made it much more boring. I think the defense has kind of solved the air raid's like dying out. They they figured out and solved it. So
run the ball then.
Yeah, run the ball.
Yeah, the problem is that still doesn't work. Like these guys like fire down, like these athletic safeties can get there, you know. It's like it's just made it a lot. What was funny though is watching the offseason Giants GM Hard Knocks giving up Saquon like that. Like it was just kind of it is what it is, and then Saquon goes on to have that season. Man, that's got to be brutal.
Giants.
That's such a special thing. The 2 high started against Mahomes in 2021. They said Mahomes was figured out back then. He's won 2 Super Bowls since that season. Yeah, it becomes this kind of check down. And remember, like I think the first play the Chiefs did was that RPO where they like faked the swing to Worthy and then they hit it to on the glance route. Like it opened the game. And I was like, oh, they're going to be able to figure it out. They're going to have to do this style. And then it just completely went away.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. 2 high is not great for the fans, but man, Fangio's kind of revolutionized how it's going to look. And it's a lot of just like quarters on this side, cover 2 on this side, and then you flip it based on what's going on.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Georgia doesn't have to do much recruiting; just turn on Philly defense highlights.
You got a ton of Georgia boys.
Yeah, half of that defense is from Georgia.
Gosh,
it's brutal. That Cooper DeJean has great fundamentals, lunch pail kind of guy. Yep, every white player stereotype he's got.
Iowa does a good job, man. They got a good coach up there. Produces a lot of good DBs, so they do a good job.
Yeah. Worthy, the first rookie ever to catch 2 touchdowns in a Super Bowl. Fun fact.
Yeah,
Joe, there's a free article.
Didn't know that one.
I know.
A free article right there, baby. Hurts threw a dime to Smith. That was a perfect throw. Yeah, that one to the post. Ooh, wee, man. That's what I was saying, man. Hurts was just like dropping those dimes, man. And if you can hit those, man, they're hard to beat.
Yeah, very hard to beat.
Yeah, it's tough. All right, guys. You want to talk about the safety coach search that's occurring?
Let's do it.
Let's go for it. So originally, Eric was thinking that it was likely to be Will Harris, the Florida safety coach, right? He doesn't think that anymore. And kind of another guy in the mix was Doug Belk over at USC. He also doesn't think that's coming anymore. And Jimmy Lake never made sense to him. So now we're at a spot of like the three guys that we probably thought made the most sense we're not seeing. And now we're kind of in a weird place where we don't know where the search is headed. So kind of what are you guys thinking there? Is there any names that matter to you? Why was Jimmy Lake's making no sense? You know, how does that work?
I think Lake, Lake's got coaching chops. Let's not doubt that. A lot of those great Washington defenses he put together with PK were the result of him helping out with defensive backs. The NFL found a space for him, even though Raheem Morris was done with him. But hey, you got to go through a little bit more of a process when you end your tenure at Washington the way he did. So that's kind of why I'm not really high on Jimmy Lake, and why move Terry Joseph away from corners when he just coached a Thorpe Award winner and a consensus All-American. So I think my whole take on this thing is like, I wouldn't just only search position coaches. Like if you're at Texas, I think Blake Gideon made $600,000 this past season, if USA Today is right. That's more than defensive coordinators at a lot of schools make. You can go
G5 DC.
Yeah.
You can go or Power 5. I mean, they took Johnny Nansen. And maybe you don't do this because cornerback is different. You can go get like an FCS head coach to do that type of thing. Maybe you don't do that because of cornerbacks being a bloodbath recruiting area. But my whole take on this is like, I don't think Texas should limit itself to just the idea of go grab another position coach, because you can pay more and because you can be on a pretty dang good staff and get some good players at your disposal, like Jahdae Barron.
What the hell is Gary Patterson doing right now?
So I don't know. That's why
the most elite safety coach ever, the most elite safety coach ever, the most overqualified safety coach you could ever get.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting to see what they'll do, but like I think you can go get a young guy to kind of match with Joseph, what they do in the secondary, who can relate to these kids, right? You can go get it from Group of 5, you can go get it from FCS.
Well, why aren't we talking NFL too? Because Sark has this theme of where he keeps taking like well-known guy, like not well-known NFL guys, and bringing them in. So like at wide receiver, we've done that.
You can do
Tichard was not; he was an NFL player. But who did we also just take from the NFL?
Kenny Baker.
Kenny Baker. So it's like, why aren't we talking about the league too? Because Sark seems to want a younger guy with excitement that's not necessarily well known, with NFL proven technique abilities.
Hey, we can ask Vance.
Yeah, Vance, what's doing, man?
He can weigh in on it.
Oh man,
Vance, quit enjoying your life hanging out, man. Come get back on the field, coach some safeties. It'd be nice.
Be interesting to see though which direction they go to. Who has the connections? Where other coaches on staff? Who shares the same agents? Like a lot of that can go into play. So who knows?
That's huge. Yeah. You're walking into a great room talent wise, right? Like you got a bright future there. In a couple of years, you're gonna have some you already got dudes, but you're gonna have dudes everywhere in 2 years.
And I know I also mentioned that I mentioned like, oh, you can look at defensive coordinators, but like you don't. I don't think you also need to look for a guy who's just like scheme genius. Like you've got Pete Kwiatkowski, who's got a pretty good grasp on that. Johnny Nansen was a play calling defensive coordinator. I know titles may be what they are, but Terry Joseph, defensive pass game coordinator. So that's 3 coaches already right there.
Get a technician.
Pretty great insight on how to do scheme. Not to say Kenny Baker doesn't know like what to do scheme wise, but like that may not be his strength. His strength may be technical ability.
Right.
When you're recruiting corners, you got to be able to recruit. when you're coaching corners, you got to be able to, recruit. So maybe you look for somebody with that being their strength and understand, yes, they got to be able to coach the position. They got to be able to, help with, game planning and stuff like that. But the way the Texas defensive staff is built right now, you don't need like a, scheme genius. It's like, I know quarters like the back of my hand. Like you can probably get somebody with some recruiting chops to.
Well, and Eric keeps zeroing in on coaches that are either in Southern California or have connections to Southern California. So he's talking about like Belk. I think Will Harris might have had something, but he's talking about Martin at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
There's like throughout Eric articles on it, he keeps honing in on like guys that have some ties to Southern California. So that would lead me to believe that maybe there's something there to Southern California, or something that maybe like would be like a recruiting stomping grounds, like Joe's saying, that would be valuable. Maybe we want to get somebody that can take the load off there, because we're doing really good in like the Georgias of the world, right? We got the Deep South, which is super important. We have Texas, Florida. Maybe now we're trying to really hone in Louisiana. We're trying to zone in on Southern Cal. What do you guys think?
I mean, we got a lot of people that's heavy West Coast, right? From Nansen to Sark, Chris Jackson. So maybe they want to add another guy who, I don't know, that can recruit West Coast.
Eric's just zoned in several times.
Yeah.
On all candidates have ties to Southern California. Yeah. And he mentions that.
Is Nick Saban doing anything?
Yeah. That would sound nice, right?
Oh, man.
Oh.
The Earl Thomas stuff is funny.
Hey, here's the thing. Like, and I'll make one quick college basketball crossover. Like, Juwan Howard, great player, and he was an NBA assistant for a long time, but it didn't translate really well to Michigan basketball in attracting talent. And so, there's only so many Deons in this world, and there's only one Deon in this world. Earl Thomas, one of the best safeties probably in the NFL this century, one of the best players ever play at Texas. But like, when you're walking into a living room or a coaching office or on the phone, you got to be like, why am I better than this other coach at being able to get the most out of you? Earl Thomas, at this point, not to say he can't do it, but he's all about, I am a all-pro safety. I did this. I did this. Somebody else can go like, I coached this player to this. I coached this player to this. I coached this player to this. So like, the former player thing, that's why Tashard Choice started out as like an intern with the Cowboys. He had to go to North Texas to start his career. Like, there are cases where people can skip up the ladder, but when you're recruiting and you're trying to get like the next Jahdae Barron and the next Malik Muhammad, or like players the talent of Patrick Surtain and a guy who left, Devin Sanchez, like, you're trying to get, you are in one of the toughest recruiting battles of your life, and you have to have chops on that front.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, great actors don't always make great directors, right? So it's like it doesn't always translate. Coaching is a different skill set than, because I've heard that a bunch, man, like a bunch of former players. And the irony is that Blake Gideon's a former player. So I see where the thought process, like I get it, but just assuming the logic isn't, oh, great safeties make great coaches. It's that, even though it seems like that with Gideon, it's a very rare few. And also Gideon comes from a line
coaching
of coaching
background.
Yes.
Right. It's like a family business, which is a little bit different.
Earl Thomas and his brother was one of my fantasy names.
Was it? We will not continue that line. All right, guys, let's hear from Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512, or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description, as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
All righty, guys. Let's check in on the chat here. Anyone can coach, but can you teach? Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big deal.
it matters.
It matters a lot.
Yeah, just because you're a player doesn't mean. Also, like great players, right? Like Earl Thomas knows what we're talking about, but we also have this strange assumption that's just not true that players understand football a little more than they actually do. So it's like a lot of them are point and shoot. They can't really, like the special ones, right? Jade Barron for us, he knows the scheme. He knows everyone's job. That's what makes them special.
Right.
But a lot of players, they just kind of knew their job in quarters, or they knew that thing. They didn't understand the wider structure that they were in. And so that's something too that I think fans kind of mistake. I think they, especially at the college level, that players understand the wider game more than they actually do. Coach, is that fair, or am I off base there?
It just depends. Some of them do, right? If they put in the time, the homework, and try to understand the why behind it. You see a lot of guys, mostly light linebackers, right, who know everything, and they're really tied into a defensive coordinator. So they learn that. Most people do just learn their job and what they do, right? They don't really watch film and study the why. But you got you got your one-off. Some players are really dialed in and want to know everything. Some of them just like, I know my job. I'm gonna go ahead and execute on Saturday versus looking at a wide scope. So
I think position matters too, right? So like Michael Taft knows what's up. Jade Barron knew what's up. It's also like it depends on your position. Like defensive linemen generally don't need to know that much because they're just attacking.
You're reading a lot more. You're diagnosing. You know?
And so it's like it is position specific too on like who has a ton of knowledge. That's always kind of interesting. A lot of players are saved by their amazing talent, but to ask them to point out the concepts behind the screen, it will be tough for them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we're talking about the difference between like an employee and an executive, right? Like the coach being the executive, you know? So it's like the coach is, of course, going to know how it goes more. Most people, if you're just working at your normal job, you don't understand how all the pieces of your job fit together, especially if it's really big, right? So it's that they're just different things. Coaches and players are different things.
Is that question about veer and shoot quarterbacks?
Where? Oh, here. Yeah. Dude, exactly. It's also schematic. Like how much, like there's a reason why you constantly hear players say, I want to transfer and play for Sark in a pro style.
Right.
That matters too. Like you're selecting for more heady players that understand that like playing the air raid is not preparing me enough. So there's also that.
Yeah.
Did Mike Leach ever play a snap of football?
Nope.
No.
Yeah. There's also the inverse too. Is like, well, you didn't play, you didn't know anything. That's also the assumption that if you played, you somehow knew everything. Just think back. Most people don't play college, right? When you played in high school, did you understand your offensive scheme totally? No, you didn't. You know,
why? And it's also super basic.
Exactly.
Right.
We ran like 7 plays at Denton Ryan, and still I didn't understand.
Right.
Trips power right. It's not like that in the NFL or in college.
Yeah. That's how it is, just because you can do that. There's a question here that I think we missed from the spring game. Is there a possibility Sark would open up practices for fans if the spring game is tanked? They did that. Didn't they have an open practice? Yeah.
Once, like before his first year, I think. So because that was like a big Casey versus Card moment. That's kind of coaches do that when they're trying to generate excitement. I think we're all pretty excited about where Texas is right now.
Yeah.
And it's also like, you don't want I think it's one of those things where like you don't want some player to get this newfound exposure and be like, oh, I want more, I can, or some coach to call him like,
yeah.
It's a weird thing where used to you were so like secretive about your schematics. Now you're almost secretive about your players.
Yeah, Sark is secretive already about his schematics, and so now this is going to create this even more closed door approach, which I do not appreciate. And also, if you open up a practice, it just becomes de facto spring game.
Yeah,
I don't know what you do, guys.
I don't know. It would be cool if we had like all access. I don't know, man. It'd do numbers. I know it would.
I mean, Dillingham does it, but granted, Dillingham had to build excitement on a program going to a new conference that came off what's it called? NCAA hell. Like Herm Edwards burnt that program to the ground. So how do you get people back interested? You let them know basically everything about the program.
There's also a scale to that too, right? Like the Texas of the world will not operate like Arizona State. It's
Yeah.
like that's the problem is like these smaller schools need the press. Like you said, Texas doesn't need the press.
Because
And so it's like there's a difference leverages here. Like we get jealous all the time of like, UNT reporters can basically start at quarterback.
yeah.
And so it's like there's kind of that difference too of like how they handle the media based on their scale.
It's like you think of Phoenix, you got the Cardinals, you got Kevin Durant on the Suns. I don't think the Coyotes are there anymore. And then you got the Diamondbacks who are pretty good. So you're already probably 4th or 5th in that city. So how do you get more press? You give the press every available option to post more about your program.
Yeah, you let them do the marketing. But, yeah, that's kind of the tricky part too. Joe, I'm going to let you – I know you got to go at 10:15, but you know what? I'm a good guy. I'm going to let you out 3 minutes early.
Homer, I appreciate it. Right before the bell goes. Y'all have fun.
Yeah, dude. Have a great flight. All right, Coach, we're going to talk cornerbacks, the old corner room. This is from Eric's article. So, really, we're just going to cheat, and we're going to just read Eric's article here, which will be fun. Let me pull it up, though. Fun room. I think the future is really going to be fun at this room, too.
Yeah, they got a lot of long, lengthy corners who can run, man. A lot of good athletes.
Yes, sir. All right. So this is from Eric's people close to the program. We'll start with Jalen Sr. He'll play star and corner. It's interesting. This is something we've been debating, right? And corner is probably his better position. Who else did they say this about last year?
Yeah, they said about Barron, right?
Yeah, said about Barron, right? One of the fastest players on the team, probably top 8 speed-wise before the freshman arrived. Tough kid. He can do it. All right, so we've been arguing back and forth on multiple shows if we think Jalen should go to corner, if it makes sense. Some of us have been questioning his pure play speed, right? But this seems to answer that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Remember, I questioned Jade last year because he was getting cooked in the slot when he was nickel versus Brendan Presley versus Oklahoma State. I did not realize at the time that he was hurt. So I remember questioning Barron's speed because I saw Brendan Presley was just slot fading him all day. Yeah. And then clearly I was wrong on that. And so I haven't said anything about Jalen's speed. That was more Paul Wadlington, guys. Blame Paul Wadlington for Jalen Gilbo's lack of speed.
Oh, my God.
But it is interesting to say he's top 8 speed-wise. So I think that kind of answers the question. What do you think? What do you like him at corner? And then what is this kind of downstream for the other guys, right? That means that it's going to be Manny and him, and then Kobe's playing that third corner. What does this look like?
Yeah, definitely. That probably be the matchup. And a lot of people maybe question Gilbo's speed because at nickel and star, you're thinking so much. You can't just react and play.
Are they running? Are they running? Is this RPO?
Yeah, it's tough, right? You're the guy they're reading the whole time. So he may be slow to reaction sometimes, but it's not because he's slow. I think he'll fit well at corner. I know he played a little corner his freshman year a little bit. He got it there versus Bama early. So, he's there mentally. He can pick up the game. I think him at corner makes sense. He's a big guy. He could be a big press guy. If Texas chooses to go more press man, I think he can get up in the receiver's face and press and run. And it'd be a good spot for him. But, yeah, Kobe would be that third guy. Hopefully Warren Roberson, who is kind of the same mold as Gilbo, can take the next step and put it all together. But that's a physical corner. I think you can move Gilbo, have his side, play the boundary side because he's a little bigger than Malik. And so I think it's a great fit him playing corner because he's played a lot of football, right? And the more football you play, the more film you've watched, you understand the game. And when you play star, you see the game from a different perspective.
I'm going to say, man, it takes the load off of you, man. If you're used to playing nickel, like that level of processing, to me, it's the tight end of the defense. I mentioned it last week because you're doing run pass, right? A lot of run pass. So you're doing both. But to be able to then you just get to go to corner and you're like, hey, I got my outside guy. I'm going to zone drop. I'm going to play like now at this point, you can start doing Jade Barron stuff where you start freelancing and stealing picks because, frankly, the mental workload of a corner is not at where it's at with a nickel.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's why I think he'll be able to transition to corner very well just because playing star is a different animal. It takes a very good one. I don't know. I don't think Tyrann Mathieu may be the only one that dominated a star. So I think Gilbo will be fine in corner. You got him and Manny locking down the outside. Like I said, you got Kobe Black, who also has a lot of length. We saw him versus Vanderbilt last year do very well when he stepped in. Had a lot of key third down stops when kind of thrown into action there. So you like Kobe. You want to see where he's at mentally because corner's a tough spot. you give up catches, you're the worst corner in the world, right? You got to be able to put stuff in
And
the
you're
rivers
gonna
and
give
everything.
up catches.
You're gonna give up catches, right? And so I think it's just one of those things who can handle that mentally, right? Because you can play well until you give them, like you said, you give that key catch. Then the fans are on you, everybody's on you. You're the worst corner in the world at that point. So how do you adjust and bounce back will be very, very key because those guys are young, besides Gilmore and Manny.
Yeah, emotional stability at corner is huge. And
tough.
you're gonna give up. You're gonna give up plays, And the worst part is you don't even get credit for remember like Malik, we wouldn't even see Malik all game. Like for the first half of the season, it's like, is he even starting? Like is anyone playing corner? Because they were that good. So you don't even, unless you get a pick six, they don't even notice when you do well. I mean, you just notice them when they mess up.
Yep.
So it is tough, man, with the fans getting on you for basically having a fundamental kind of misunderstanding of what a corner is. All right, Manny Muhammad, here we go. Just need to get back to basics and flush those issues from last year. Still room to grow as a player. Movement skills directionally are a strength, but not the fastest guy. He really needs his technique to be right, and normally it is.
Yeah. Manny's the student of the game, man. I think he's going to get back in the lab and get it right. Yeah, he's not the fastest guy, but there's a lot of guys who were not the fastest guys. You look at Darrelle Reeves, he wasn't the fastest, but he had some of the best technique, right? And so Manny, I'm not saying he's Darrelle Reeves, but he has the ability to have very, very good technique, understanding the game, understanding route concepts, where you can kind of make up for the speed because you understand the game more, you understand what the offense is trying to do, how they're trying to attack you. So, yeah, get back to the fundamentals. I know I'm not sure if he's going to work with Bam Performance. I know I kind of wrote about that this Sunday. A lot of guys are working with him, but maybe he finds a guy in the Austin area to kind of work with and hone on those skills. I know he usually comes home work with Coach Kyle Ward at South Oak Cliff, who trains, a cousin and a ton of other guys. But just get back to the basics, get in the lab, man, and work on your game. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Warren Roberson, sophomore. So talented, but he needs to put it together, right? It's all mental. Tough kid, purely a corner. Okay, so this is interesting. So Roberson, like this is what we've heard, he's athletic, but we saw on special teams the mental mistakes, right? So it seems that's consistent. He's all there athleticism-wise. So he's a sophomore, and sometimes they can be on a longer curve. But like you said, we hear purely corner too, which if you're saying that mentally he's not nailing it, then you don't want him at nickel. So interesting with Warren Roberson. I think he's intriguing, right? He's just a young guy. So let's see if he can figure it out. I bet he can. And then also let's put more resources into him, right? Let's make sure he's learning it too.
Yeah.
Because when you got a special athleticism, maybe he needs a little bit more time, one-on-one coaching, or some GA can help him. But let's invest more resources there as well.
That's the biggest thing. I don't think people understand. Like, coaches are limited how much time they can spend with you, but that GA or analyst, let's go get some extra work in. So I think all the guys need to do that.
Especially when you hear the word "so talented," right? You don't want to. So it's like, hey, man, do everything you can with him.
Yeah.
Even if you got to babysit him a little bit, he's also going to grow. And also, I think there's a part too. Like, the tricky part is they won't let you out there unless you know what you're doing, so you don't embarrass the team. But also, being out there kind of forces maturity too. So it's like this weird mix of like you don't want to give them reps because they're probably going to mess up, but by not letting them get in the fight, you don't incentivize them to grow, right?
Right.
And so it's like that's what's kind of interesting there. So it's like, hey man, get in some non-consequential spots, throw them some reps,
Throw them some reps, and don't pull them as soon as they get beat. Let them work through it. I think that's
Right.
a lot. We see that a lot. They'll pull a guy. It's like, no, let them play through it.
Yeah. Kobe Black, big dog. Sophomore as well, stud. He can get faster and stronger. Popular in the locker room. That's important. Pretty good directional movement skills, but length is primary advantage. Physical and uses his size. So what is that's a Ryan Watts, right?
Yes. That's Ryan Watts. Even when he's beat, his length can make up for it, right? He has a lot of reach, can get to the ball and bat the ball down, kind of like Richard Sherman did a little bit. And so even though you don't have the foot speed, right, you make up with it with your size. Just like a big receiver makes up with a body and a cornerback out, or have a bigger catch radius. Kobe is that at corner, and so his size really makes up for a lot of things. I think, man, that's an imposing figure right there at corner. You don't really want to throw it a big corner.
Big. When you turn on the tape, you're like, you can see him immediately. Yeah, it's can get faster and stronger. Yeah, that's every sophomore. But that's also code for he needs to hit the weight room harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you just play him at boundary, man, and you let him
Play him a boundary. Let
You
him,
let him play
go a little
underneath.
bit.
You let him play zone so he doesn't get beat, or you let him play underneath and you have a safety over the top if we're worried about his downfield speed.
Exactly.
Santana Wilson, player intriguing too, right? Like whenever we were recruiting him, redshirt freshman, high upside, can be a stud. Just needs to figure it out. His dad's a pro, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was. Yeah.
Get bigger and
Wilson.
stronger.
Yeah.
More time being coached. Just keep developing. Tools are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's another guy just have to earn reps. I think the spring will be key for him. Just getting thrown out there and learning, going through mistakes, your ups and downs, and see what. I think mentally he's gonna be fine. Dad's a pro, was all pro, great safety for the Cardinals, man. I mean, I think this guy understands the game better than most, even at a young age. I think he'll probably get out there and he'll probably be able to adapt a lot quicker. Sometimes a lot of guys who come from a pro family or their dad was a pro, they see the game a bit different. So I think he'll be able to figure it out. He just needs reps, honestly. I think he'll be very good.
Yeah. And then Wardell Mack.
Yeah.
I think it's also an interesting, intriguing player for fans. Stud. Keep developing at a tough position, bigger, faster, stronger. Has the head for star, and that's important to hear.
Yes.
Needs more experience, moves well, tough guy, well suited for that position. This seems all positive. Like all he needs is reps, right?
Yep.
That's all it's saying. That's great. I love to hear that he has a head for star. We like to hear stud.
Yeah, definitely. Remember he got in the game late with the Mississippi State and he kind of read the ball and got to pick him back in the end zone. Like, he made a play on the ball, which is good to see for a young guy who hasn't gotten many reps. He got in and made an interception right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited about Wardell Mack. I think that's going to be an interesting player going forward. Now we got some commentary on the young guys that we brought in. Cade Phillips, the 5-star.
Yeah, I love Cade. I love Cade. I love what he can be. He has the size. He's going to blanket guys at this level. He just has athletic ability. I think his best football is ahead of him because he won't play safety. He won't play a receiver. He'd be strictly corner here at Texas. So, but I think him playing receiver in high school really, really helped him with his ball skills because he'll go up and get the ball. But he has the ability to run with anybody. He has good technique. I think he's more twitchy than most people think. He has good hips, I think. And so I think he'll get better as he goes. But he's another guy that's long and kind of like Kobe Black. I think a little more twitchy. He has the hips and feet.
Yeah, he's also like very stoic on his photos, but apparently he has a real personality off of it.
Yeah.
I was like, this kid is going to be one of those awful interviews, when you're trying in there, just like, yeah. But apparently, no, he's very personable, but he just gets real serious when the camera comes out.
Yeah.
Caleb Chester, freshman. Chester's maturity is already standing out. That's important. 6'1", 190 pounds, and well put together. Don't be surprised if Texas hits the evaluation.
Yeah, Chester comes from a high school known for speed and Fort Bend Marshall. So he can run like the rest of the guys who came out of that program. I think we're in good shape. They always have a ton of athletes. Just like Eric said, well put together. If he can put it all together on the field, man, I think you got a guy who people may not be picked to be the guy, but he just shows up because he has height. He has, he's well put together. He has a ton of speed. He can run. So he might be a guy that kind of creeps up in the depth chart. It's like, man, where'd he come from? Caleb Chester.
And then Grayson Littleton, the
Yeah.
special teams phenom on Huddle.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah. Similar to Chester, Littleton showed up ready to go. He compares favorably to Muhammad, but he's faster. Could become a star.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What is that's tricky, right? Like he could become a nickel or he could become a star player.
I actually could see him at star a little bit just because of the way he played looking at his film. I think he does a good job, especially with press, bumper run. But he's a little bigger guy. But it's like most punt returners, they see the game different, right? I think he has that ability to kind of read and react and understand. So maybe he could be a star. Or he could be a star in both senses. Who knows?
Yeah. So in closing, okay, Muhammad has a lock on one starting position, but the other is wide open, right? Not just open. So that's interesting.
Wide open.
Yeah. So Gilbo and Black, I guess. We should hear about fierce competition between Gilbo, Roberson, and Black. Okay, that's interesting. I think it's too early to anoint anyone, but maybe someone will grab the bull by the horns and leave. No doubt.
Yeah. Can't wait to see. That's what spring is about. Let's make it happen. Go out there and compete and see who wins or earns the spot or earns some reps.
Yeah. We'll see, man. Corner is an interesting position to watch. I was going to say we'll see in the spring game, but we probably won't.
Right.
All right, Coach. You got any final thoughts or anything? Or are you ready to ride, man?
Ready to ride, man. It's a busy week. Get out, go to some high schools.
Yeah, what's on the itinerary? What recruits are you looking at?
I'll be by Duncanville this week. Probably go Frisco, Panther Creek. See Donovan Webb and Jalen Lott. And those guys, everybody's setting their official visits, so it's good to see that. Kind of see who's going to be coming in together. I know the offensive linemen are pretty much coming in together on the 13th of June, and so I'm starting to see other guys kind of set their dates, which is fun. You always want to see that. Who's the staff trying to put together on a visit, right? So it kind of matches up. I think that's a good thing. So can't wait to see more guys jump in the fold, set their official visit dates. I know John Turntime said his yesterday. He'd be at Texas on June 20th to the 22nd. So that'll be awesome to see. But yeah, that's pretty much it this week.
Cool, man. Looking forward to it. You can read Coach's articles when they come out on InsideTexas.com, guys. Tomorrow I will be on with Paul Wadlington. We'll be talking, guess what? Texas football, as we do every day. Thanks for hanging out, fans. Coach, appreciate you, and hook 'em, y'all.